What are cue ball phases? With the help of my coach Demetrius, today's video is the foundation of cue ball control in the game of pool. Understand this, and you will be well on your way to running out more often, because the real difference between players who run out when they're supposed to and players who don't is cue ball control. Imagine if you had ball in hand for every shot. That is the difference between what a pro can do with the cue ball and what you can do with the cue ball. Give yourself the opportunity to play shots within your skill set and you will win so much more. Demetrius and I are about to show you how to make the cue ball do your bidding. Let's go. Some of you might think this is a really basic topic, but do me a favor and just for the next few minutes, throw out what you think you know and dive in with a fresh set of eyes. I am an online pool learning junkie. Believe me when I say that nobody out there describes cue ball behavior and can demonstrate it in the same way that Demetrius does. So I'm just gonna step back and let him take the reins for this video, and you guys can see for yourself exactly what I'm talking about. Take it away, Demi.
I've been teaching pool for over 6 years. During that time, I've seen again and again that a lot of players have the same issues, whether it's with their technique, holes in their knowledge, or their ability to put it together effectively on the table. For that reason, I've partnered with Slate Billiard Club to make an online coaching group where I run through my playbook, helping people identify the leaks in their game and find effective ways to plug those holes and turn in a better performance. One thing that we work on in the group that I think will help a lot of the people watching this is better understanding of cue ball phases and table influence. This is a diagram I kind of borrowed from Ray Martin's 99 Critical Shots of Pool, and I fleshed out a little bit. Basically, this shows draw, slide, follow with different phases. When you shoot the cue ball with backspin across the table, that backspin wears off. Why is that? It's because the table has friction, and the table friction wants to eventually develop the cue ball into a full roll, into a rolling ball. That's the most natural path of the cue ball. What's useful about this is you have to understand there's a difference between initial spin and effective spin. When you put your tip on the cue ball, you're creating an initial spin. If you cue low, you're creating backspin. If you cue at the center, it's going to be a slide. But that's what happens when the cue ball leaves your tip. It doesn't necessarily stay that way because the table friction changes the spin of the cue ball. And as that spin changes, then at some point it hits the object ball. When the cue ball hits the object ball, it may have a different spin than what you started with. I call that the effective spin. That is what actually controls the direction the cue ball takes after object ball impact. Sometimes the change from initial spin to effective spin is minimal. Other times it's drastic. So what is it that controls how many levels of spin you lose? And the variables, as you think about your shots, you think, well, one variable is distance. How long is the shot? Another question is, how hard are you shooting? Distance and speed are very relevant. And the reason why is because if you think about distance divided by speed, that's time from the strike of the cue ball until the cue ball hits the object ball. And it's the amount of time across the felt of the table that determines how many phases of cue ball, change you're going to see. So we're going to look at some examples on the pool table of areas where this is very useful, very practical, and ways that you can level up your game.
Allow me to use Nate as a guinea pig. The first thing that I want to point out is that maximum topspin is actually nothing more than natural roll. To demonstrate that, Nate, come on over. I'm going to set this cue ball a diamond off the rail roughly. I would like you to use maximum topspin and follow to the end rail, max high ball. Very nice. Very nice. Now I want to set up the same shot and I want you to cue with dead center. What's going to happen is even though he's cueing dead center, the table, because of the distance between the cue ball and the 8-ball and the speed he's shooting at, the table will have time to develop the cue ball into a natural roll, which is going to produce the same effect. What controls the cue ball, remember, isn't the initial spin where his tip hits the cue ball. What controls the cue ball is the effective spin, what it's doing when it hits the 8. So you can shoot center ball. It burns a little speed, of course, as it converts. So go ahead and give it a little oomph and use center ball with a nice, confident follow through. And you can see that it followed just as much with center as it did with maximum high. Now, which was easier to pocket, maximum high or then center? Center. Because when you're maximum high, you're flirting with the miscue limit and the tip is in the way of your sighting. Now, if you had a preference on how to shoot this, my guess would be it wouldn't be maximum high, But center ball might be a little low. I mean, you probably prefer like what, a half tip?
Yeah, to get the ball rolling.
So a lot of times I see people shoot a shot where the cue ball's naturally rolling, and then they don't get as far as they wanted to. They say, oh, I needed to hit that higher. But it's like, once it's naturally rolling, guys, there's no more topspin you can put on. Nothing higher than natural roll. That's the first thing to understand. All right, Nate, I need you again. On this shot, we're going to reverse the situation a little bit. We're going to be following up for the shape on the 9-ball. I'm going to put the cue ball fairly close to the 4. Now go ahead and shoot maximum high ball and try to follow to the head rail with the shape on the 9. Beautiful. Nicely done. Whatever your rudder pad. Now go ahead and shoot center ball from here. All right. Now, in this case, the cue ball did not react the same because the initial spin on the first shot was a follow. So it remained a follow. But on the second shot, the initial spin was a slide. And notice that the cue ball developed a tiny bit of forward roll. It didn't slide to here. It actually rocked forward, but it didn't have time to develop full roll because the distance was so small. There wasn't enough time for the table influence to take it from slide all the way to a natural roll. Hence, we didn't get shape. A simple question that I think will help simplify all this is, who's putting out the follow? You or the table? In this case, because the distance was great and the speed was low, the table is going to develop the follow for you. So you don't have to worry about following the ball. It's going to happen automatically. Whereas in the second case, when you're close to it, the table's not going to have time. It's not going to help you develop roll. There's just not enough table influence. So therefore, on this type of shot, you have to cue very high. It turns out that it's not easy to cue high enough to get natural roll right off your tip. Usually when people follow the cue ball, they're relying on some table influence to help get the roll. So as a challenge, here's a challenge shot. We're going to put the 9 on the spot. We're going to put the cue ball lined up, not straight. We don't want a double cast. We're going to want to line it up for maybe half a diamond left of the center. And I'm going to put the cue ball maybe 6 inches away from the 9. Similar to our last shot, the table influence is not going to have time to give Nate much help getting full roll. With a full roll, if you cue maximum high, the 9-ball will bake to here. The cue ball will hit that head rail just an instant before the 9-ball hits this foot rail. If you hit it not high enough, you won't win the race. I call this the race. So go ahead. You race the 9-ball.
Let's see how many tries it takes me to do this.
And oh, just behind, pretty close. That was 90% follow. That was 90% follow. Now you can just line it up. I don't have the
Yeah, that's all good.
vision for that. Ooh, we got a chance. Just a little bit more oomph, a little, because I think it just needs not much more, but just a little more oomph than that. There it is. Yep. That's how you win the race. So it's not easy, but that is a way to test it. If you guys want to see the setup from this side, it's roughly like this. That is a way you can test to see if you can cue high enough to generate full roll right off your tip. Generally, you don't need to worry about it because the table will help. But if you're shooting with speed from close distance, that's the only way to get lively follow action. And a lot of people don't really know that spot on the cue ball. And when they have spots like this and the cue ball doesn't follow, they're caught off guard. One great application of this that's super useful is following the cue ball with side spin. Because I like to, this is some of the stuff I teach, guys, top secret information straight from our online coaching group. This cue ball is a sphere, not a cube. And what that means is that if you go maximum high ball at the miscue limit at the North Pole, you cannot go left or right because you're already at the miscue limit. If you go left or right, now you're outside the miscue limit, which means you will miscue. Yes. So what you have to do, if anytime that you're using a high inside or high outside type shot, you may not know this, but that by definition means the only way to get a high inside or a high outside shot, you have to delegate some of the forward roll to the table development. You have to say who's putting on the follow. The table has to help put on the follow so that you can lower your tip from max high and then open up access to the left, right side of the cue ball. So for example, Nate, if you were to follow this cue ball, you would need right spin to help run the cue ball up for shape on the 8. The problem is if you use maximum high, you won't have the right spin needed and it would be really difficult to get the cue ball far enough. But if you use maximum right without any high ball, the distance is so small and the speed is so firm that it won't have time to develop full roll. And if I just dribble to the end rail here without full roll. So you have to eyeball and learn the feel and say, hey, how much help am I going to get from the table to develop roll? And the answer is not a lot. He's probably got to be about 1.5 to 2 tips above center so that combined with the table influence, it will be rolling when it gets here. On the other hand, not so high that he's limited to center ball. So go about 1.5 to 2 tips high, like 130, and see if you can't get the cue ball fully rolling while still applying right spin. Beautiful shot. Beautiful shot. So now, if you tried the same shot from very, very close to the object ball, this is becoming very difficult because now he's not getting any help from the table. And so it's a thing a lot of people don't know is you can't even shoot the same shot from here. Because in order to get the cue ball fully rolling with no help from the table, you have to cue miscue limit high, and that prevents him from using right spin. So you might look at this and realize the same shot's not even really available.
Yeah, it's not possible.
So to recap the point here, anytime you want to roll a ball with side spin, you have to trust that the table will develop the cue ball roll. You could go a little bit above center, but the closer to the equator line you are, the more side spin you can access. And so if you really need an extreme side spin, if the shot allows, you can cue equator line, maximum side spin, and let the table put the follow on for you.
If you've made it this far in the video, then you now know what I know. And that is 2 things. 1, that Demetrius has a way of explaining pool that brings misunderstood, fuzzy concepts into focus. And that 2, if you've made it this far in the video, you should comment, follow for dough, just so I can see who the real ones are. Or you can just follow the channel and use my affiliate links so that I can make some dough and make more content just like this. Remember to check out the Patreon and stay tuned for more exclusive content with Demetrius here on this channel. Until then, happy shooting.